Starting off this countdown, we have Scar's corpse. The Lion King's character Scar can be seen in Hercules, but he's not alive. No, they show his dead body, which is pretty dark, Disney. Sheesh. So in Hercules, there's a scene where Hercules is wearing a lion on his body while he's getting painted. He then takes it off and throws it on the floor, and we can clearly tell that it's the body of Scar. So after the Lion King, Scar was skinned and then given to Hercules. How dark. And this was actually confirmed by Disney's lead animator. Andreas Deja worked on animating both Hercules and Scar in The Lion King. So they threw this in as a little Easter egg. In our 9th spot, we have The Shining. And if you guys are liking this video so far, why don't you hit that thumbs up button? Because it really helps us out and I appreciate it. Stephen King's The Shining was referenced an awful lot all throughout Toy Story, which is super whack because we all know that The Shining is not a kid's movie, and it's certainly not Disney friendly. First, let's take a look at the first Toy Story. Fans were quick to point out that the carpet in Sid's house looks exactly like the carpet in the hotel in The Shining. I mean, they are different shades, but it's the exact same design, which is also quite clever because then they're trying to use this to symbolize how terrified the toys feel inside of Sid's house by comparing it to how the characters felt living in the hotel in The Shining. Like 10 out of 10, that was super well done. But that's not all. There was another reference to The Shining, but this time in Toy Story 3. They used the number 237 a lot throughout this film. 237 is reference to room 237 in The Shining. This number can be seen on the license plate of a garbage truck, on a message Woody sent to a toy whose code name is Velocistar 237, and on the side of a security camera in Sunnyside Daycare. In fact, one of the editors on the film admitted that these were all references to The Shining. I mean, it's kind of a weird movie to reference in a kid's film, but whatever. Moving on, at number 8, we have Melted Olaf. Sadly, a lot of Disney characters don't have the happy ever after we thought they did. Next, let's take a look at Olaf from Frozen. He's such a fun and loving character, but sadly, he doesn't have the best ending. Sometime after Frozen, Olaf dies. He melts away. And his body can be seen in Moana. If you take a close look at the supplies Moana is carrying with her on her boat, you can see an oddly shaped carrot and a stick that looks like a hand. Looks exactly like Olaf's nose and hands. So Moana was using his nose as food and his arms as a possible fire starter for her mission. Well, that's dark. In our 7th spot, we have Finding Nemo. Again, for this next Easter egg, let's take a look at the tearjerker of a movie, Brother Bear. For real, if this movie didn't make you cry, then you're a monster, or your heart is made out of ice. Anyways, in one scene when the character is salmon fishing, we can see Nemo among the group of salmon that's about to be caught and eaten. First off, how the hell did Nemo, a tropical fish, get so far north? Like, Marlin must be tired of looking for your ass. Anyways, what does this mean? Well, it means that Nemo, the little rascal, went out again and got lost somehow. And then he ended up as someone's meal. I doubt he made it out alive this time. Now, it turns out that at this time, Disney and Pixar were feuding, so that might be why this creepy little cameo was put into the film. In our 6th spot, we have Skinned Sully. Now, I love the movie Monsters, Inc., so this one is pretty dark for all you fans out there. But Sully is dead. Yep, you heard me. He died sometime after Monsters, Inc. was released. So in the film, Randall always mentions how bad humans are. At one point, he says that humans skin monsters and make toilet seat covers out of their fur. Sadly, this foreshadowed the fate of Sully. In a Toy Story short called Toy Story Toons, Partysaurus Rex, there's a scene where we see a kid taking a bubble bath. And it just so happens that in the bathroom on the toilet seat is a fuzzy Sully seat cover. So Randall was right. Humans do skin the monsters and turn them into toilet seat covers. Poor Sully, he ended up being skinned alive. I wonder what happened to Mike then. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Boo Went Crazy. This next Disney Easter egg is accompanied with a pretty dark and crazy theory, so buckle your seatbelts. In the movie Brave, in the witch's workshop, we can see a wood carving of Sully. Why would that be there? First off, Brave takes place hundreds of years before Monsters, Inc. does. The witch and Sully didn't exist at the same time, but she drew him. meaning at some point in her life, she must have met him. Well, theory goes that this witch in Brave is Boo from Monsters, Inc. I know it seems wild right now, but just hear me out. So Monsters, Inc. takes place in the future when humans don't exist anymore. It's theorized that the monsters use the doors to go back in time to a child's house to then collect their energy. Meanwhile, in Brave, we see that the witch magically disappears when she goes through doorways. Just like the scarers from Monsters, Inc. do. So theory goes that Boo couldn't forget about Sully. She missed him so much that when she grew up, she figured out how to teleport through doors. She then teleports through these doors in an attempt to stumble across Sully again. It's just sad because she did not age well. And who's gonna tell her that Sully is a toilet seat cover? Not me. Coming in at number 4, we have The Shining Part 2. Toy Story isn't the only Disney movie to reference The Shining. The movie Coco does it too. And this is because the guy that added the Shining Easter eggs in Toy Story also worked on Coco. So in one scene, we see Dante, the dog, waking up from a nap. In the background, we see an axe stuck in a tree. We all didn't think much about it. We probably just missed it too. But the director said that the axe was modeled after one of the axes from The Shining. That's not the only reference though. In that same shot, right behind the axe, there is a red drum. The director said that this was a reference to Red Rum from The Shining, which we learned is murder backwards. You thought that was it? Think again. The Grady twins from The Shining also make an appearance. Yeah, you know those creepy little twin girls in blue dresses? They're in Coco. As Coco runs through Frida Kahlo's underworld art studio, we see a painting of the two twin girls. The director again confirmed this reference. So creepy. Yeah, let's put The Shining in a kids movie. Great. In our third spot, we have The Last Rex. Rex from Toy Story can be seen in the 2008 film WALL-E. In one scene, we see him in the back, among Wally's collection of human junk. Now, if you think about this Easter egg is actually very depressing. Rex is all alone in a world that has been completely destroyed. All of his friends are dead. He's alone, isolated, and unloved. And as we know from all the Toy Story movies, loneliness really gets to these sentient toys. Rex is probably so anxious and depressed now. Moving on to number 2, we have Herbie Fully Drowned. Speaking of sentient things, our favorite car Herbie from Herbie Fully Loaded has died. This car has made a cameo in a number of Disney movies, but sadly, his time has come to an end. In Finding Dory, there's a scene where we see Herbie at the bottom of the ocean. He's badly decayed and covered in moss, meaning he's been down there for quite some time. Now, I don't know if Lindsay Lohan pushed the car into the ocean or what, but we all know that cars and oceans or large bodies of water don't mix. So sadly, his time has come to an end. And in our number 1 spot, we have The Three Little Pigs. Disney is sick for this next Easter egg. So for this one, let's jump back in time and take a look at Disney's animated short, The Three Little Pigs. In one scene, we see the pigs singing and dancing in one of their homes. But beside them, in the back, is a framed picture of sausages. As we all know, sausages are made out of pig. To make matters worse, the frame is labeled as father. So their father got turned into sausages and then eaten. In another scene, we see another framed piece of meat. This time, it's like a ham leg or something, and it's also labeled as father. So the Three Little Pigs' father was killed, hacked up, and sold as different meat items. Like, that is so twisted and sick. Starting off this countdown, we have the deadly accident. Disney has made the illusion that no deaths or accidents ever happen at their parks. That's a big lie. With thousands of guests coming and going every day, something is bound to happen. And Disney will go to extreme measures to make sure that word doesn't get out about it. One example would be Javier Cruz. In February of 2004, Javier Cruz, a worker at Disney, got dressed up as Pluto and headed out to join the parade. However, the foot of his costume got stuck and the float behind him didn't stop. It ran over him and he died. He had been working there for about 9 years. This was such a tragic accident, but it didn't make news like it should have. Moving on at number 9, we have the unsanitary conditions. So back in the day, cast members at Walt Disney had to obviously share costumes, but they also had to share undergarments. Yeah, up until 2001, each costume had their own Disney-sanctioned undergarments that they would all have to share. That is so gross. But because of this, a lot of workers were passing around scabies and pubic lice to each other. That is highly, highly unsanitary. I'm just glad that that's not a thing anymore. They ain't gotta share that stuff. Moving on, at number 8 we have the sexism. Disney has a very sexist past. So a letter from Disney from back in 1938 showed that they wouldn't hire women to work for them. So the letter was addressed to a woman called Mary Ford, who applied for a position on the animation team. In the letter, Disney said, and I quote, "Women do not do any of the creative work in connection with preparing the cartoons for the screen, as that task is performed entirely by young men. For this reason, girls are not considered for the training school." At the time, women were being discriminated against in many ways, but many people were shocked and angered by this letter. Coming in at number 7, we have the cursed ride. Due to its dark history, Disney park workers and others believe that the Matterhorn ride is cursed. First off, this ride is responsible for the most fatal and non-fatal incidents. In 1964, a teen on the ride stood up in the bobsled and died after being thrown out from it. Then at another time, the ride caught on fire, injuring a family in their sled. And another visitor died after she was launched out of her seat and hit by another bobsled. You think they would have fixed the ride after the first couple of deaths. But no, they blame it on a curse instead. They should look into the safety of that ride. Clearly, it's not safe. And again, all those deaths happened at the park and still not a lot of people were talking about it. In our 6th spot, we have the deadly fireworks. Back in 2015, a Disney worker died after attempting to launch a firework off of his head. Devin Staples was a 22-year-old Disney employee. He was best known for dressing up as Gaston, but he would also dress up as multiple other characters. Upon lighting the firework, he died instantly. His brother said that there was no rushing him to the hospital. After the firework went off, he claims that there was no Devin left. Now, some say that this was actually an accident. He never really planned to light the firework, he was only teasing about it. Either way, this is so sad and tragic. But obviously Disney doesn't want anyone to know that one of their workers died on their property while on shift. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Snow White. In 1937, Disney came out with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which is the first and oldest feature-length animated film released by them. Now, you would think that voicing Snow White would be the role of a lifetime. But no, think again. Adriana Caselotti, who voiced Snow White, actually had her career ruined by Disney. So Disney made sure that besides Snow White, she was never credited for any other work that she was in, and she was banned from doing any other voice work. Why? Because they wanted to preserve the illusion of Snow White. She couldn't even do radio interviews. That's a little extreme, like Disney owned her voice. Moving on to number 4, we have the Lemmings. In 1938, Disney came out with a nature documentary. In the documentary, there's a scene where a bunch of lemmings commit suicide by leaping into the ocean off of a cliff. And Disney claimed that that was normal and part of the animal's migration. They even had a clip in the movie showing the lemmings doing so. But this is entirely false. These animals don't just jump off cliffs in groups and kill themselves. So for this scene, Disney imported a bunch of lemmings and then pushed or threw them off of a cliff. That's not really a happy ever after ending for them, Disney. In our 3rd spot, we have the ashes. So apparently it's a thing to take your loved ones to Disney World. Not your living loved ones, no, your dead loved ones. And then you sprinkle their ashes all over the park. Believe it or not, but this happens more often than you think. Visitors will bring their loved one's ashes on a ride and then release them down on Disney World. What about the other people on the ride? Like, all you need is a gust of wind to blow those ashes right into their face. Now, there's one ride in particular that people love doing this on. Take a guess in the comments below. Done? Okay. It's the Haunted Mansion ride. I don't know what it is, but tons of people release their loved ones on this ride. And when that happens, Disney literally has a special vacuum that they use to suck up the remains. Like, they have a protocol in place for when people do this, because it happens so often. That's so messed up. Maybe don't do that, because your loved ones are just gonna end up in a vacuum, and then in the trash. Moving on to number 2, we have the Alligator Attacks. So once upon a time, Disney had a really bad alligator problem. But obviously they didn't want park guests to worry, so they kept downplaying the problem. From 2006 to 2015, 220 alligators had to be removed from Disney World. Then from 2015 to 2016, there was a massive increase of gators at the park. Since Disney is connected to waterways that intersect with lakes and rivers, alligators have an easier access to Disney than they admitted to. Sadly, in June of 2016, a young park guest was killed in an alligator attack. That's when Disney was exposed for downplaying the seriousness of their alligator problem. And in our number 1 spot, we have Debbie Stone. Debbie Stone was an 18-year-old hostess at Disney. However, in 1974, she sadly lost her life while on the job, and her death remains a huge mystery. So Debbie was a hostess for America Sings, which was a musical performance at Disneyland. For this attraction, you would be seated in a theater facing a stage, and after each performance, the theater would rotate. But sadly, during one performance, Debbie got caught between the rotating wall and the stationary stage wall. She was instantly crushed to death. She was found with her body in pieces. Her death was kept a secret, like all the other ones on the list. Disney didn't want the other workers to hear about it, and her friends working at Disney were not allowed to even make a memorial for her. But the mystery remains. How did Debbie end up between the walls? Was she pushed? Did she trip and fall? We don't know. Only Disney knows.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the missing mothers. Have you ever noticed that a lot of characters in Disney movies don't have mothers? Or if they do, something bad happens to the mothers in the film? Like Belle from Beauty and the Beast, or Snow White, or Bambi, which is truly one of the most tragic examples that I can think of. I never really noticed this trend until it was pointed out to me, but it's honestly very common in Disney movies and had me wondering, what was up with that? Well, there is a theory that this morbid trend is due to the fact that Walt Disney himself had bought a home for his parents to move into. After moving in, the furnace had a leak and it unfortunately affected both of his parents and actually led to his mother passing away. An extremely tragic situation that Walt refused to talk about after. Many people believe that he felt guilty for the incident since he purchased the house for them, but of course it was not his fault at all. It's very possible that this real life trauma he experienced just ended up bleeding into his work. In our number 9 spot today, we have Walt's last words. In 1966, Walt Disney was diagnosed with lung cancer after being a lifelong smoker, and he passed away not too long after. We always hear famous last words from people that are either inspiring or just downright terrifying, but Walt's last words were just strange. Walt was unfortunately unable to speak due to the condition of his lungs, so his last words were actually written. The last words were Kurt Russell. I wish I could tell you this super interesting story about Kurt, but he was actually just a child actor at the time of Walt's passing. Kurt did voice work, but he also starred in a few movies. Unfortunately, no one really knows why Kurt was on Walt's mind in his final moments, and unless Kurt knows something that he isn't telling us, we will probably never know. In our number 8 spot today, we have a Toy Story connection. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far, because it really helps us out. Toy Story is an absolute classic that is well loved by many. I mean, what kid hasn't imagined their toys coming to life behind closed doors? It honestly is the dream. One little known thing about Toy Story though is its creepy connection. In the Toy Story movies, there are quite a few subtle references to the movie The Shining. Definitely not what I would have expected. I'm not exactly sure why this connection exists, but it does. In the scene where Woody and Buzz Lightyear are trying to escape escape from Sid's house, that carpet is the same one as the one in the Overlook Hotel from The Shining. Also, the number 237, which is a terrifying room in The Shining, is repeatedly seen throughout the Toy Story franchise. There are even more connections as well, such as the way the scoring for the movie is set up, which was inspired by, you guessed it, The Shining. And in Toy Story 3, the Sunnyside Daycare has an intercom that is an animated duplicate of the one used by Wendy Torrance, and just a few feet away is a tissue box that has the same pattern as the carpet I mentioned before. It's a lot of connections, and I just wish I knew why. In our number 7 spot today, we have this Disneyland Invasion. In 1970, 750 hippies went to Disneyland and took over the Wilderness Fort. They passed out joints to other guests at the park and marched down Main Street singing a version of Zippity Doo-Dah that they had altered in order to be about the Vietnam War. Other people at the park began to sing America the Beautiful and tried to overpower them with their singing. This of course all got out of control, and eventually police in riot gear had to show up in order to defuse the situation and to keep it peaceful. Luckily, everything ended non-violently, and this is actually one of the only times that outside police ever had to handle a security issue at the parks. But this instance led to quite a rule at Disney parks. There was a strict dress code implemented that prevented long-haired hippies from being allowed to enter the parks. This is obviously not a great rule, and of course has since been abolished, because that would just be insane if that rule was still around in 2021. In our number 6 spot today, we have Hell's Bells. In 1929, Disney made a short film called Hell's Bells that was a part of the Silly Symphonies. While the Silly Symphonies seems like a fun, great time, Hell's Bells was a little less than silly or fun. It was basically just a short about hell, and the characters in it had different names, but they definitely depicted some of the most loved Disney characters. Honestly, the whole thing is pretty terrifying and really dark, and just totally off-brand for Disney. Satan and his demons have a wild party, and he feeds one of the demons to a character called Cerberus, who I'm pretty sure is actually the underworld version of Goofy. All in all, I think it's better that we just leave this one in 1929 where it belongs. In our number 5 spot today, we have this Disneyland Dangerous Metal. When Disneyland was being built in 1955, one of the main metals that was used was lead. This is insane since it's poisonous to humans. It just seems like someone would have caught this fatal flaw. Research has shown that prolonged exposure to lead can impact the reproductive and nervous system in really terrible ways, and it can also even cause cancer. If you're just taking a ride or two, it's probably not the worst thing in the world, but working at the park, especially if you're on the maintenance team, this could definitely have some extremely harmful side effects. Eventually, testing was done that found that the Peter Pan ride, the Haunted Mansion, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, and the Sword in the Stone statue, as well as even more, were containing high levels of lead. I'm not exactly sure what steps Disney has taken, if any, to correct this issue, but I do know that complaints were still being filed in 2011, so it'll be interesting to see if this was fixed 10 years later. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Disney World deaths. Disney World is the happiest place on Earth, or so they say, so it is always shocking to hear of anything bad happening there. Well, Disney World has been around for 56 years, so some less than great things are bound to happen. Unfortunately, at least 14 people have died at Disney World over its course. The reasons span from rides to accidents to pre-existing health conditions. Some of the people have been guests, while others have been backstage workers or cast members. It's definitely not the type of thing that we are used to hearing about a Disney park, since they of course like to keep their image as squeaky clean as possible, but hey, there are some things that are just unavoidable. In our number 3 spot today, we have this woman's rejection letter. The 1930s weren't exactly an ideal time to be a woman for a multitude of reasons, and one of them just happens to be the difficulty in finding employment. Women who applied to be animators at Disney Studios constantly found themselves being turned down because of the fact that they were women. One woman named Miss Frances Brewer was one of the many women who applied for a position, and this is the rejection letter that she received from Disney Disney Studios. Women do not do any of the creative work in connection with preparing the cartoons for the screen, as that work is performed by young men. For this reason, girls are not considered for the training school. To qualify for the only work open to women, one must be well grounded in the use of pen and ink, and also of watercolor. The work to be done consists of tracing the characters on clear celluloid sheets with India ink and filling in the tracings on the reverse side with paint according to directions. With how far we've come from this time in America, it just feels so shocking to know that this was once the norm for women. In our number 2 spot today, we have this goldfish incident. Finding Nemo is an amazing movie, and no one can convince me otherwise, but one thing I didn't know is the effect that it caused on goldfish everywhere. I know Nemo isn't a goldfish, but more people are buying goldfish as pets than they are buying clownfish. After the 2003 film came out, when kids saw the movie, they thought that by flushing their fish down the toilet, they would be sending them back to the ocean where they would be happier. It's truly noble in theory, but obviously most fish can't survive the flush, and if they do, they're headed to the sewage system, which will then end up taking them out regardless. It's truly the sweetest thing that all of these kids wanted to reunite their pets with their long-lost family, but who would have thought a Disney classic would lead to Goldfish Genocide? In our number 1 spot today, we have the problematic history. Most Disney movies instantly become popular because they are usually great, and having them come from a reputable source definitely doesn't hurt. There is one Disney movie from a while ago that you might have never heard of though, and it is called Song of the South. The movie follows a small boy who goes to visit his grandmother's plantation, where he meets a black man who they call Uncle Remus, who is a former slave, who was played by a man named James Baskett. Yep, that is unfortunately a real movie that was made by Disney, and the reason you may have never heard of it is because it is obviously super racist. What's worse is that the movie actually won an Academy Award for Best Song in 1947 for Zippity Doo-Dah. It's safe to say that this movie has since been buried, and it should definitely stay that way.
Coming in at number 10 of our Disney Urban Legends, Walt Disney haunts Disneyland, California. Walt Disney opened the original Disneyland in 1955, and he loved the place. In fact, saying he loved the place is a huge understatement. He doted on the place. He spent the majority of his time there until his death in 1966. Walt had an apartment above the fire station on Main Street. When he was in residence, it was said he always kept a lamp burning in the window so everyone knew he was there. When he died, the lamp was switched off. Eerily though, it seemed that the lamp would have a way of turning itself back on. One day, a staff member was cleaning the apartment when she heard a voice that said, "I'm still here." From that day on, Disney's lamp has kept on burning in the window as a mark of respect and acknowledgement for his ghost. Coming in at number 9, there are real skeletons on Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean ride. So according to legend, real human skeletons are used throughout the Pirates of the Caribbean rides, and this is exactly what Walt Disney ordered. I guess this kind of makes riding on the scary themed log ride even spookier, knowing that you're surrounded by actual skeletons. Some people even say that Walt Disney's own skeleton is hidden amongst the bodies on the ride. Now I actually do know the truth behind this creepy urban legend. Like most stories that have been passed down over the years, there is some truth to it. When the ride first opened in 1967, 1 year after Disney's death, fake skeletons looked pretty rubbish, well, like pretty fake. So in the planning and building stage, Walt Disney wanted real skeletons to be used. He never got to see the finished product, but true to his wishes, real skeletons were indeed used. Eventually though, they were replaced. Not only was it kind of morbid to have a bunch of dead people on a Disney ride, fake skeletons started looking a lot better. Now the only real human skull that exists is on the headboard of a bed at Disney World in Florida. This is really weird because on this ride they never had fully human skeletons anyway, like in California, so. Also Disney are telling us that they're now fake skeletons, but who knows? Coming into number 8, there is a ghost hitchhiker on Space Mountain. Legend has it that a red-haired man who died on the ride still enjoys a spin today. The man, often dubbed Mr. One Way, is said to have died in the 1970s whilst on the attraction. It is said that he sits next to single riders, but by the time the ride ends, there is absolutely no sign of him. For those that don't see him, they say they can feel him behind them if there is an empty seat at the back. There have been a number of reports of the Hitcher, and he may or may not have been caught on camera a couple of times. Check this out. Coming into number 7, we have the mysterious urban legend of Mowglis Palace. So this is kind of an urban legend creepypasta surrounding an abandoned Disney attraction. Redditor Slimebeast, aka Christopher Howard Wolf, wrote a post about an illicit visit to the grounds of a defunct Disney theme park in Northern Carolina. So allegedly, Disney wanted to open a Jungle Book resort in Emerald Isle, North Carolina. From the very beginning, it seemed to be fraught with issue. The locals did not want Disney to buy the land. Nonetheless, it was bought and primed for opening, when all of a sudden, the project just stopped. The park was closed, employees were dismissed, the whole place was shut up and hushed up. According to the urban legend, a dude goes to explore, camera in hand. He finds the place in a state of expected disarray. He finds the words "abandoned by Disney" graffitied in a number of areas. Eventually, the intrepid explorer finds staff areas and deduces that the place was not just simply abandoned, it was evacuated. It is then the explorer finds mascot costumes. The only thing is, they're actually alive. Or, it seems that they were. The costumes have skeletons inside of them. As the explorer tries to escape, he said a Mickey Mouse chased him. While there have been some alleged aerial images posted of the secret park, it turns out that it's just a really scary creepypasta. There is actually an abandoned Disney water park that you can still visit if you're an urban explorer these days, but I'm presuming that none of the mascots are alive and running amok there. Coming into number 6, we have the legend of the sacrificed Snow White. A story submitted on Reddit 4 years ago really gives me the chills. Posted in the No Sleep subreddit, Redditor Bletch1994 shared his experience of working for the Magic Kingdom. Upvoted over 2,000 times, the poster kept his real name anonymous. He said that 99% of all the work at Walt Disney World goes on after the show is over. He was working construction on the park for a while, mainly working on the Seven Dwarfs mine train ride, which was set to open up. Long Reddit story short, the guy said that a lot of the crew were very sketchy about being alone in various places. They had to take their lunch breaks at 3 AM, and one day the guy forgot his lunch bag and headed back to get it. But he stumbled across what can only be described as a sacrificial cult scene. Robed figures were crowded around a Snow White character who was bound, gagged, and crying. The guy said a half moon was carved into her forehead and she was cut by the figures. The guy basically said he was so freaked out that he turned and ran. Now the next day he told his older foreman what he had seen. This man had worked at the park for nearly 4 decades. The foreman told him that he had seen a lot of this kind of thing in his time at Disney, and that the land was brought from a lot of groups who required special payment in the form of blood sacrifices. He urged the construction worker to never discuss what he'd seen, mentioning that the executives at Club 33 were more powerful than he could ever imagine. Now he finishes the Reddit post by saying that he quit right there on the spot. Good. Coming into number 5, we have the legend of the Platform D Bellhop on the Tower of Terror. In 2007, Walt Disney's Hollywood Studios Tower of Terror took its final plunge, but what will happen to the ghost of the Bellhop said to haunt the Twilight Zone? Legend has it that one of Disney's cast members who operated the ride as a bellhop dropped dead one day on their shift. The Tower of Terror has 4 elevators: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. The bellhop died on Platform Delta as he loaded guests onto the attraction. Now it seems that the man may never have actually clocked out for his shift. Disney cast members test the rides before they open to the public, and some have reported someone else sitting with them on the elevator when testing from Delta. There have been pictures of a ghost-like figure sitting in the back of the ride. Now again, a photo was taken after hours on the tower, and some people have spotted a truly ghostly figure. The ride is currently being torn down to make way for a Marvel attraction, so who knows what will happen to the ghost. Perhaps it will make him angry. This is a very popular one at number 4. Disney is cryogenically frozen. So I don't really know where this one comes from, but a lot of people seem to believe it. When the topic of freezing comes up, a lot of people cite Walt Disney as a main contender. Disney died of lung cancer in December of 1966, aged just 65. The urban legend seems to come from a comment made by the president of the California Cryogenic Society in the 1970s. Bob Nelson told the LA Times that Walt Disney wanted to be frozen. This led to Disney's daughter Diana making a public statement to target the claims. She said, "There is absolutely no truth to the rumor that my father, Walt Disney, wished to be frozen. So if he had been frozen and we eventually found a cure for lung cancer, a whole new generation could enjoy Disney movies." I wonder how it would feel to be woken up after 50 years of being frozen. I guess ask Austin Powers. Again, we have a very popular urban legend at number 3. Disney used mind control on kids watching his movies because the Illuminati told him to do so. There have been so many Disney conspiracy theories out there that Walt Disney wanted to turn kids into sex-crazed teenagers. Movies including Aladdin, The Lion King, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Ariel the Little Mermaid, and The Rescuers have all been accused of trying to brainwash kids with non-PG content. So-called truth seekers have tried to expose Disney for his sexual content, saying there is sex written in the sky in The Lion King, that the genie in Aladdin tells teenagers to take off their clothes, and of course there's some classic Jessica Rabbit vajay. Some say that Disney wanted to sexualize children from a young age as the Illuminati wanted them to be targets of abuse. Disney's Club 33 has also been amid paedophile ring claims, but we'll get to that later. I personally don't know about this one, but I don't know, maybe the urban legend is true and we're all sex crazed because we watched Pocahontas once. Coming in at number 2, urban legend has it that the It's a Small World dolls move and switch places. I think we can all agree that the It's a Small World ride is pretty creepy. It just is. Tiny dolls scare me at the best of times, but singing tiny dolls? La! It's also one of the oldest Disney attractions, which somehow to me makes the whole thing creepier. Anyway, legend has it that the dolls come alive when no one is looking. How do we know? Well, it seems they have often been found in switch positions. Employees at Disney have mentioned it on several occasions, with many way too freaked out to go near the ride. Some even go as far as to say the dolls keep singing after hours. Author Ridley Pearson is one of the more high-profile people who swears he saw the doll move. He was on a VIP after hours tour and is convinced that they have a life of their own. How can they keep singing when the electricity's been shut off? I don't know. Clearly they're evil. I think I can tell that by looking at their creepy little doll faces though. Ah! I wonder what happens if you play It's a Small World backwards. I bet it's like, take off your clothes, teenagers once again. The genie's anything to go by. Finally, coming into number 1 of our top 10 creepy Disney urban legends, we have Club 33 is the Illuminati Headquarters. There have been a lot of links between Walt Disney and the Illuminati. Loads. When Walt Disney was alive, many people accused him of being part of the Freemasons, a group that is constantly linked to the Illuminati. There definitely seems to be something shifty going on at Club 33, the exclusive clubhouse in Disneyland, California. It is the only place in Disneyland that serves alcohol. It actually seems that these days, clubhouses exist across all of the parks. Officially, the original club was intended for use by Disneyland's corporate sponsors and industry VIPs. Now, the original location is somewhat hidden in New Orleans Square, and you can only gain membership by invite. Paul McCartney and Elton John are said to be members, although a lot of people are totally convinced that something very suspicious and culty is going on behind those doors. Remember the Snow White point from earlier on in the video? Like, maybe these are the people slashing up Disney characters for some kind of blood sacrifice. I don't know, for me, this is definitely just an urban legend.